edition of the Cardinal Couple Radio Hour podcast, where we discuss the joy and excitement of UofL women's athletics. And yes, it's here, it's back. The fall season officially underway beginning last night at a Lynn Stadium. We'll get into the game last night that the Louisville women's soccer squad was involved in. Game exhibition, scrimmage, whatever you want to call it. I call it a Cardinal win, and that's enough for me. And if that isn't enough, and surely it should be, we have a full house here today on the broadcast. All five of the Cardinal couple crew are in here to discuss the game and also some of the other upcoming fall sports. So it's always fun when we have the whole crew here together, and certainly glad that everybody could make it today. And who knows when it'll happen again. So enjoy it while you can, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. Let's kind of catch up with the gang. Daryl in here with us. Daryl at soccer last night. Daryl, what's been going on in your week so far?
What a beautiful night for just being out in general. But yeah, to be able to see everybody, I felt like as soon as I walked in that place, I was just seeing familiar faces and um, socializing and um, just an awesome night to be back on campus, and you could just feel it in the air. And luckily, no train stopped me on my way there. I know you guys were really, really hoping for it.
The
We had one,
Yeah, there was
Half
one
of you
train.
had a caboose.
a really mini one, but
The pregame train process was huge. I think we had
yeah,
three.
I think 3 pregame while we were there.
Yeah, but then it was kind of like they saw the over under. They bet heavily on the under, and they
Yeah,
cleaned up on me. So,
yeah.
oh,
And the one that the joke there is the one that we had was just an engine,
Yeah.
no
the
cars,
the
just one
the
engine.
barriers didn't even have time to go down before this thing was out of there.
Yeah,
they they did that just for comic effect.
right.
What happened is they were all sitting around the CSX offices, and a couple of the guys that had too many tequilas, and they said, "Hey, let's take us out for a run," and they ended up down there UofL.
Geek moment there. That's actually Norfolk Southern line, not CSX.
Okay, well, they they could have been.
Nerd.
You
Yep,
never know. That's right.
I'll gladly claim that title.
How many wheels are on the engine, Jeff? Oh,
It depends. Sometimes they have four wheel buggy. Sometimes they have 6.
okay. So as we rapidly disintegrate from the early part of the broadcast,
Right.
let's go to Jeff next, who's
Yeah.
with us today, not only with train knowledge but also was with us last night at women's soccer, and as usual, I usually a very busy work week.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a minor. I don't want to say crisis, but minor, very urgent project that my team has been working on. That's tied us up this week. So, been working on that. It's going well. The team's performing well. It's a lot of fun. They're great guys. And we're making good progress on this project. We'll get it out in production here, hopefully in another few days. So it'll help some things with the company that we're really excited about. But yeah, to echo Daryl, man, you couldn't have asked for better weather. You couldn't have custom ordered better weather for watching a soccer game last night. If you didn't come out, you really missed it. And I will say personally, it was really, really great to get to visit with you all again in person. Obviously we talk and chat on the podcast here. It's not quite the same. To see significant others and friends, and that was great as well. I just really in a good mood this morning because it really kind of healed my soul a little bit. So
It was indeed good to have everybody get back together and do that, and
yeah,
I
and
was
get a
glad.
picture.
Yeah,
Get a picture.
there are pictures on the website. There are pictures on Facebook.
We have a new Cardinal Copper photographer now.
Yeah, that's right. It,
Our photographer can't take the pictures of us.
Yeah, well, not without a really long arm, anyway.
JDA is expanded now. There are
Yeah,
2 employees. That's right. JDA Photography is now going to be a corporate entity. Speaking of that, Jerry, yeah, you were out there employing Katie to take that photo, but another busy start for you as you were out there at the women's soccer game taking pictures on the field. And what's been going on with you this week?
Yeah, definitely been busy with work and knew I was going to be getting put on some projects and maybe wasn't told how much of a time commitment and exactly what I was supposed to be doing there, so a little frustrated with some of that going on at work. So it was nice to be able to look forward to Friday night, knowing that sports were back. Because it's been about 2.5 months since I've had any UofL games, and I feel like a big part of me is missing in the summer when there's no UofL games going on, and then just to echo what Jeff said and being able to get all of us together again, because it's, as Case mentioned in the article, we believe it's probably been the old Melwood studio days that we were last all together. So it was a pleasant treat, and hopefully the stars will align again at some point this year where we can get all five of us out together.
We certainly hope so, and I would love to see that happen again. So, but I give a lot of credit to Jared because Jared really pushed this thing. He was like a carnival barker trying to set this up here. Everybody, come on out together. Let's steady. But we all got out there and had a great time and got to see a win. So
That's what the crowd really came for, was to see the whole Cardinal couple crew together.
it was indeed because there was a hushed silence around the area where we took the photo.
I
Normally,
was gonna say, when we were all standing there in a circle, can you imagine just the amount of knowledge and just over the years of these teams that we've watched just standing there in that circle? I don't know if other people could sense that power, but I did. It was there.
I was thinking of the amount of hours spent at games combined between the five of us. Like, holy
I was
cow.
thinking of the amount of headaches I've had with you knuckleheads over the years. I'm like, oh my God. Now I've got them all here together. What is going to happen now?
Paulie's corralled them all.
Let's keep the kittens in the box. Don't turn them loose. Oh my God.
That's why I stayed on the concourse side so Polly couldn't shove me down the stairs.
That's so great. I was going to. See, my original idea was the four of us to stand there and hold Daryl, you know, in a horizontal position.
Like a fish.
Yeah, like
tiny.
Look what we got! The elusive Daryl. Look at her. Oh, she's alive. Look at her scoring.
You called it a full house, but I think it's more like four of a kind with a queen high.
That was a straight flush. That was
nice.
A straight flush with a queen high. You got that right. Yeah.
Like that.
We were using jokers in the deck too. That's why Case and Jared were in the photos.
Yeah.
So yeah, and just trying to catch up with everybody with five people in my brain addled mind. I'm like, oh my God, where'd I leave off? Let's go to Case. Case, what's up with you?
Not much. Finally got some outdoor furniture delivered this week, so been enjoying some coffee on the porch this morning with our new coffee maker. We gave the Keurig. We had the Keurig 2.0, which I think is the only Keurig they made that had a carafe option. We're trying to cut down on the single-use pods, so we changed to the carafe this week. Took us 4 days to determine we needed a new coffee maker, so got a new coffee maker yesterday. It makes much better coffee for a multiple person situation, and enjoyed the outdoor furniture. Still waiting such a long time for our indoor furniture to arrive, and the saga of waiting for a television that has been for, I guess, about a month since we first bought it continues. So it's a lot of fun here in the new house with new furniture and new electronics and all that stuff. But it was nice to get out last night. Jared mentioned, maybe the stars will align and we'll get out to another game. I see that happening probably sometime this season. I don't think it'll be at a volleyball match since, as we saw last night, 350 person long wait list for season tickets.
I do have an extra ticket that I can. So
I was gonna ask, does that mean that like single day tickets aren't available? So if you want to go that night,
they keep some for single game tickets.
Very few
available. Yeah, there's I think there's 600 or 700 season tickets that they sell.
Out of like 1,000 people that can be there.
I mean, it's a good chunk of the arena because you've got some of those that are reserved for pass lists and stuff like that, obviously. So that takes a chunk out of it as well. So there's not going to be many, but yeah, there is some.
And with that announcement, Jeff has just become the most popular person in history. A couple. He has a spare ticket. His email address, in case you need to get in touch with him, is. So that will be fun. And as we keep moving it on here a little bit and catching up with folks, Jared, you were there and you weren't sick for a week. That's great. We got an update on case. Is that the first week that you haven't been sick in a while, Jared?
Yeah, I know we kind of caught up with me and what's going on with
Yeah.
work, but yeah, this is the first time that I've been what you want to say is, I guess, healthy, fully healthy for several days. Started July with a cold, and not long after that, we I was stuck at home with COVID, no symptoms, and I was very fortunate with that. And then as soon as I get cleared from COVID, food poisoning, and that closed out my July and started August. So it was a not pleasant July, and so far, knock on wood, August has started much better
The
as I was able
healing
to get out
powers
last
of
night.
U of L sports.
That's what I'm going to call it. You know, I get back out there and I felt the best I felt in a couple months.
Daryl, a fun night for you last night. How's your week been so far?
Yeah, the other thing I was gonna say was the chance to I don't know if we mentioned Iko Jones being in the house for the game. So getting to see her and tell her that I hope she has a good season. That was pretty awesome. So just lots of good vibes out there last night, and I'm just still, like Jeff said, my heart is happy this morning that I got to see you all, and just a great night. As far as the week though, just kind of, I know that kids are back in school, and that doesn't mean anything to me other than traffic. Um, but just hope everyone is healthy and happy.
Yeah, it does get to be a little bit of a group project for us when we're out there and spotting players from other teams and alumni and there's other people, like Allison Whitfield was out there and Gabby Cazellas was out there. Those people, being able to spot all those players and former players from various teams, it becomes kind of a collaborative effort among us to try and find them all.
Yeah, I'd gotten a game
And they
Mueller
did the same
earlier.
for us. They shouted you out, Jeff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, Aiko yelled at me, so that was I hadn't seen her. But as we were going up to take the picture, I talked to her briefly. I said, "I gotta go take a picture. I'll be right back."
I was just surprised she didn't ask you to charge down on the field and leave the guards chair. You know?
Yeah,
I think Jeremy had that on lock.
yeah.
Well,
I need more
that's the way it was.
cowbell.
But so yeah, another busy week as usual. But certainly have had some fun with it, getting ready for that first event, and certainly always great to see the crew, as I like to call them, or the knuckleheads, or whatever you all want to refer them. Getting all five of us in there together and exchanging ideas and mug shots and everything else. So it's always good to see it. Love to see it happen a lot more. But with that in mind, knowing that it's five distinct individuals here who do have five daily lives that they have to carry on. So we nourish and appreciate and certainly cherish the time that we get to be together and see each other. And the next time we do it, we're going to make Case dress up like a clown, and then we'll have a lot more fun with that too. Sending him up and down the steps, giving away free soccer balls, right?
Sure.
That's good. And what a perfect segue into Case to do scheduling and Twitter information. So the schedule, it yields something finally.
A clown I'm not with the schedule, like you said, finally having things on it, not having to look too far ahead. An event today, even men's soccer opens their official season with an exhibition. This one's at Lipscomb in Nashville. Still no time listed for that event, which is interesting since it's today, but who knows? So that will be the first two sports on deck for U of L. They'll also be the first two to officially open the season next week. Women's soccer takes on UIC in their official home opener. Last night's game against Cincinnati being just an exhibition, like we mentioned. That's Thursday at 7:30. Has a watch link listed, so presumably that's going to be on ACC Network Extra, which is nice. And then men's soccer will take on Indiana in a home exhibition Friday night at 7:30. And volleyball gets their season, quote unquote, started with the red and black scrimmage next Saturday at 2 p.m. So Jeff will be hustling and bustling after the show next week.
Yeah,
to
leave straight from the show to get there.
get down to campus. A little bit of a further drive now that it's not on Melwood Avenue or on Frankfurt, but I think you'll make it nonetheless. As for the Twitter accounts, iTweet is at best case scenario, BST case scenario. Did not live tweet the game last night. With Lindsay there, I didn't want to, just be buried in my phone, and I was trying to learn the team and understand what was going on with all the newcomers. Paulie tweets is at Cardinal Couple. I believe he did have some tweets from last night's game. Jeff is at Jeff McAdams and at Card Couple Radio. Jared is at Mr. Anderson Jared, where you can find all the great photos from last night's game and any other time. Daryl is at Daryl Faust 4. And as always, you can check out the right side of the Cardinal Couple website with an appropriately sized photo of the five of us now. And the Twitter list that gets you all of our accounts, various coaches, and all of the UofL women's athletics Twitter accounts to keep up with there.
Absolutely.
For
Make
what
sure.
it's
Yeah.
for what it's worth, that Lipscomb men's soccer exhibition is listed at 7:00 on Lipscomb's site. So
There you go.
for what it's worth, it's a little
they
off
are
topic
they
for
are
us,
the
but
hosts, so
yeah.
I guess. I mean, UofL probably was like, nobody's gonna make the trip to Nashville for this
Right.
game, probably. So we don't need to worry too much about listing a time.
Yeah.
And it might be a case of where they say, "Hey, we'll play you guys at 7." We kind of said maybe we
We'll
might be
see.
there at 7.
To be announced.
It depends on how traffic is. If we get a good meal,
They might just be socially late,
absolutely
I-
come in
Show
at
up at 7:30.
7:45. Leave the top hat at the door. Say, hey, how y'all doing? Y'all want to play about 8:30? Sounds great. Let's do
Yeah.
it.
I
Party
wanna
doesn't
mention-
get started that soon,
While we're talking about times, just to look ahead, I know that we will have a show next week, but I want people to plan for it. The first women's and men's soccer doubleheader of the season will be the following Thursday on August 25th. Interestingly, men's soccer is playing the first game on that night, so they'll take on St. Louis at 5, and then women's soccer hosts Xavier starting at 7:30. I think this is the first time that this doubleheader that they've played has been with the teams in that order. So that's really interesting. But that should be, hopefully the weather is close to as good as it was last night for that event in a couple of weeks.
It is good to notate that the women's match should start really close to the expected and listed time now that the overtime rules are no longer existent in regular season. Where in the past they've had some issues where the first game went into overtime and then the second game would start up to 45 minutes late.
Yeah, a lot easier to schedule your personal lives with no potential overtimes in women's soccer or any soccer in college.
And of course, if you have any questions at all, you can always check out the right-hand side of the site at Cardinal Couple, where we have 3 sports listed with their games, dates that they'll be taking place, whether they're here or away, for volleyball, field hockey, and women's soccer. So that's always a quick update for you, and even updated it this morning to show the score of the exhibition. We try to provide that information for you too over there. So check out Cardinal Couple, not only for that, but for the great articles, including what Case wrote this morning about women's soccer last night. And that's where we'll begin the actual meat and bones of the show today, talking about that 2-0 win over Cincinnati in an exhibition scrimmage, whatever you want to call it. It's a win for Louisville. There were fans there. They were operating a scoreboard, and people were yelling. So I consider it, just as good as a game, right? Daryl, first time you'd seen women's soccer live in a while. I think some of your observations on what happened out there last night.
It had been a while, hasn't it? I need to think back on last time I actually was out there. But I got to go with a girlfriend of mine who played soccer in high school, so she's also pretty versed in what she's watching and willing to go to any U of L event. So she was able to, like, sometimes she would say something that I wouldn't be able to phrase, like, that's a good ball, and I'm like, oh yeah, it looks great. So it's good to have people around you that understand what they're watching. And I was surrounded by Case and her and Jeff, so that made it just that more exciting. And we were pretty close to, I mentioned Jeremy, who's a big fan. He's been a big fan for a really long time, so he's got the cowbell. He's leading chants. If you're a big fan of the Cardinals, clap your hands. So lots of hand clapping and stomping, and a good crowd vibe out there. Really enjoyed it. Great views. The team looked, um, I mean, what can you tell from an exhibition? I don't want to say that this team looks like above and beyond last season just yet. We're just getting to know these players. And if you read Case's article this morning, you get lots of little tidbits of what we can expect. And I'm excited. Soccer always kicks off the fall season for U of L, and um, I enjoy it and hope that they have a really successful season.
Absolutely so. And I did notice we could even hear it up in the press box, which a lot of times you don't hear crowd uproars and things like that unless they're really loud. That there was a strong Oldham County presence in Lynn Stadium last night because
Hmm.
anytime a player would either enter or leave the game that had played at one of the Oldham County schools, like in Crestwood or Pee Wee Valley or something like that, the fans were really
Mhm.
erupting. And we couldn't figure out why at
Yeah.
first. And then actually, it was our new SID up there from Notre Dame, Matt, for women's soccer, who put the connection together. He said, they really love Oldham County around these parts, don't they? And then we had to kind of explain to him, oh, it's the county
Hmm.
right next to us and yada, yada, yada. But yeah, so the Oldham County folks were really out last night to watch that one. And that's always good to have. Hopefully that will continue because I think there were also a couple of Oldham County players on the Bearcat squad, too, if I remember correctly. Not having my roster in front of me, but so that was fun to hear them kind of yell about that. And certainly at times you wouldn't expect the crowd to erupt either. A
Yeah, those
substitution, you know.
those early cheers were actually for the Cincinnati side.
Yeah,
Substitutions for, like you said, those Oldham County players coming in. Um, it was definitely interesting, and I thought that maybe they were only going to cheer for the Cincinnati players, but I guess it took a while for one of the U of L Oldham County players to sub in,
yeah.
because then the cheers were even more loud and raucous once that happened.
A defensive dominated game by the Cards case, I would call it. Coach Kerr Ferguson seemed to agree. What say you?
Yeah, defensive minded for the Cards for sure. The defense did quite a bit of work, but I think that a lot of that defense also held up from the front line and from the midfield. Louisville controlled 62% of the possession total in the game. They spent the majority of the time in the offensive half of the field. Um, very little time was spent in their defensive third in general. Uh, so that is good to see when you're going to play a formation like a 4-4-2, which is what Louisville has returned to. I wrote a little bit about that today. I don't know that we've seen it since Neve Nelson left. I believe when Sarah Hernandez was a freshman and Nelson was a senior was the last time we've seen that. Um, being able to have four solid defenders on the back line to keep that shape. And when you've got a formation like that, you're really depending on defense throughout the field, which moving Maisie Whitsett, who spent the last 2 years on the back line, back into her more natural position as a forward, really gives you defensive power from the front line back. Uh, the midfield played really well. Louisville had two freshmen play all 90 minutes in key positions. Carson Cherry played 90 minutes at center back alongside Sarah Hernandez, and Lizzie Sexton played 90 minutes at center midfielder alongside Savina Zamborini. So um, good production from them. Good to see them get that time and experience. Carson Cherry scored her first collegiate goal, um, though she'll need another one because that one won't officially count. So we'll look for that next week. And the other freshman that started, not counting the goalkeepers because they're all freshmen, so it was going to be a newcomer either way. But the other freshman that started was um, Addie Chester. She was really productive. She got a second assist off of a corner kick. She was kind of all over the field, and offensively, Louisville played pretty well. I think they would have scored 2 or 3 more goals if Rexford hadn't been so good for Cincinnati between the sticks. But defensively, like you said, the team held Cincinnati to just one shot total. Neither goalkeeper's credited with a save. I don't think either even got a defensive touch, if I remember correctly. Um, and when I say that, I mean like clears or punch outs or crosses saved or things like that. Um, the defense really did a lot of the work, and the goalkeepers were kind of just minding their own business. So yeah, it was good to see. And like I said, Louisville probably could have scored more without a somewhat heroic performance from Cincinnati's goalkeeper. So all around, pretty encouraging.
Jared had a field eye view of the contest, and they're taking photos. Macy Woodsett started the scoring out for the Cards about the 23-minute mark, I think, when she made it 1-0. And Jared, she seemed to be really happy in her new role down there, and was certainly leading the Cards to some great things there and there last night.
Oh yeah, Maisie Witsit finally returned to a position she was much more familiar with in high school and her early playing days at U of L before she had uh, transitioned over to center back there for the last couple of years alongside Sarah Hernandez. Maisie Witsit honestly could potentially play more of a striker position depending how the team will proceed forward with some of their looks. I think Maisie Witsit has a strong leg. She's got a bit of a cannon for leg, as we've seen in the past as well on some of her free kicks and set pieces. I think she's just thrilled to be able to score again. You know, as a defender, you don't have a lot of opportunities to score, especially as a center back, but you do see those happen sometimes on set pieces, like Carson Cherry got last night. But yeah, Macy is certainly going to be a crucial part of the offense if we continue to see her play a forward role this year. And she would certainly be a good player to help guide and lead a lot of these younger players that will come in and lead the offense next year after she has graduated.
I would think that she's going to be a very strong leader for the Cards this year as well, too. And Jeff, another player that we've been kind of waiting to see, get some action in for actually the last 3 years is Corianne Dente, who came in, didn't start, but then came in the first half and played for a total of 47 minutes. So kind of relieved Chester a little bit, relieved Woodsett a little bit, but it was good to see her out there again and actually get some meaningful time in after injuries and everything else. And having Dente back in the lineup could be really, really big for Louisville down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. It brings another kind of weapon on the field, and certainly, like you said, very great to see her on the field after struggling with some injuries. Encouraging to see. She's a talented player. We've watched her a bit in between injuries over the years, and it's good to see her out there. I It brings, I think, a little more balance to the attack when you have those multiple attackers. And kind of picking up on a little bit of what Case put in his article and talked about, you have, Maisie Witset back up front, where she's played a couple of years in the back, playing defensively. On the converse of that, you have Raven Alexander, who's a very offensively oriented player, but she's playing in the back row now, playing more defensively. So you really end up, I think, with a lot of balance on both sides of the ball. You can have, defensive prowess up front and in the back, but also offensive prowess. We saw Raven Alexander come forward a lot. Wasn't particularly productive directly, but changed the approach of both teams as she came forward when the opportunity arose. So I think that's, we see that a lot in a lot of different sports when you have to rely on a single player, a single offensive power player, then the other team can key on that. But when you have that balance, you can move around the field, you can attack from multiple directions. That keeps that defense kind of on the back foot a little bit, to where they can't be as aggressive. So it's good to see, and Crendente will be a part of that. I have no doubt.
Looking forward to seeing how she progresses as the season goes on as well. She was the one that came in with such high credentials and everything. I was thinking, wow, we got a player of this talent on the team, and that we finally get to see her out there and do some good things. So that's fantastic. Uh, Also, hey, let's beat this one around a little bit too. Carson Cherry, a freshman, got a goal, although it's not going to go in the books like Case mentioned earlier. Still, her first time on the field as a collegiate player, and scores a goal for us. And she looked pretty impressive out there. Was actually kind of playing more of a defender role guy, but she looked to be comfortable with what she was doing. She seemed to help the team a lot. let's talk about her just a tad a bit too. Jared, you seem to be very active, is what I could tell.
Yeah, it's always nice to see some of your freshmen step up and make big plays early in the season. Just it's promising to as they'll progress forward, but it's also just a good way to help ease the transition into the collegiate style of play. She's going to feel a lot more comfortable and confident out there going forward now that she's got that goal. She had a really strong showing last night on defense. So you like seeing those early bright moments for some of the freshmen. From what I was hearing from a couple other people that I was talking to on the field, she came in fairly highly touted as a defender. So I'm excited to see her back there, and uh, certainly coach is comfortable enough to put her as a starting center back and to move Maisie Whitsett back up to forward. And we've seen in the past where coach will get comfortable and trust certain players in different positions. So the fact that she's already trusting Cherry to be back there, along with a really strong defensive line, a lot of veterans back there, as we've mentioned with Sarah Hernandez, Irvin Alexander, strong uh, fullback back there too with Anoop Denton. So I'm really excited to see what she's going to do going forward, especially as in future seasons as Raven Alexander and Sarah Hernandez are on their final years of eligibility.
Hey, Jared, I was curious while you were down there on the field, how was the communication? Who was most vocal? Could you tell?
There's nobody that really stood out quite yet on that. I can tell you it was not the goalkeepers that were overly vocal yet, but they were both
Mm-hmm.
freshmen. And when you get used to hearing Gabby Cazellos
Yeah.
going nonstop for 90 minutes, anybody who's going to fill that role back there is going to be considered much quieter. I think there were definitely times where I heard Sarah Hernandez a lot. She's really stepped up as a leader in past years.
Mm-hmm.
Offensively, there wasn't really a lot of enough that I could hear. I think they're still just trying to figure out bits and pieces. And I think when you've got a lot of newer faces on a team out there, especially with freshmen, I think communication is going to be one of your more key factors that you really have to focus on. Being an exhibition, and they were trying a few different looks here and there. I thought the UofL just swung wide a lot more on offense than they've done in the past. So trying some different looks. I think once we get to regular season, we're going to hear a lot more vocals and communication out there. So I'm going to really keep a close ear with that on Thursday.
And my thing is I feel like, eventually the more these ladies play together, they won't even have to communicate. They'll just be able to look at each other and know what they're thinking.
Right. The more they play together, and you'll see this with any sport, you get used to each other's style of play, and you can kind of anticipate what your teammates are going to do. You should know where they're going to be at or what direction they're headed.
Yeah.
There's still sometimes last night you saw on some of the passes that kind of maybe went a little errant just because you didn't know where your teammate was going yet. That you're going to see that a lot. Or early season, preseason, I'm not too worried about that yet. I think once we get through the first few matches, those passes are going to be completed really well. Although ball handling, first touches looked fairly good last night for so early in the season.
Mm-hmm.
I've got to wonder how just vocal Gabby was up in the stands watching instead of not playing. Was she yelling things out to the players over the uproar of the crowd?
You're going to have to ask Daryl and Case and Jeff on that one.
I will say that she was visiting with a lot of people. She was going around talking to a lot of different people. Seemed like she knew just about everybody in the crowd. So I don't know if she was directing them and guiding them, but she was certainly talking to a lot of people.
You sit over there. No, wait a second. You're one row too high. Wait a second. Get on the end of the aisle. End of the aisle now. A goaltending battle, Daryl, we had there where we don't know exactly how Aaron Floyd drew the start because
Mm-hmm.
we actually have 3 goalkeepers on the roster now. One, unfortunately, in Olivia Bradipus, who we nickname Opie, by the way. So if she does get into games later on this year, we can, when we refer to Opie, we are not referring to the Andy Griffith show. We're referring to Opie Bradipus. But Aaron Floyd got the start, played a really good first half, I thought, Daryl. In the second half, of course, in fairness, coach decided to come in and say, "Okay, Alyssa Zalik, you get the second half." And I asked Coach Daryl after the game, "Is this going to be something we're going to see the rest of the year, half and half on the goalkeepers?" And she said, "I hope not," because they're in competition. You know,
Yeah.
eventually one of them is going to win this thing.
Yeah, that's kind of the message I got there. But to be fair, Cincinnati really wasn't giving them a whole lot of opportunity to show themselves. I think I looked up and there hadn't been a shot on goal for Cincinnati very, very late in the second half. I think I mentioned it to Case. Like, is that right? But yeah, and then I think about it, and there wasn't a whole lot of action in the Cardinals' um, goal for them to showcase their talents. So I mean, that's a good thing in a sense. Louisville's defense, but I like that she did mention that to you, that it's still a competition, and it makes sense to me. Um, while they are on the same team, it's still a job that one of them would like to win. But Cincinnati didn't really put a whole lot of opportunities out there for them, so it's kind of hard to judge who won that battle.
Yeah, I don't know if you could actually claim a winner. I know that they weren't busy though, and that's always, I think, something that you've got to be kind of happy about, that your goalkeeper isn't being overworked. Certainly
Right.
in the game of soccer, but it was so slow. I was actually getting direct text messages from Alyssa Zalek in the second half, going, "Who's up in the press box with you?"
What kind of snacks are there?
Yeah, is there a lacrosse player up there? I'm so jealous. You know, did they give you all food this year? No, so, they they hopefully will have such duty-free games in the future, but
Yeah.
I just don't know about that. Cincinnati, quite honestly, didn't impress me. And when I heard that Butler beat them 5-0 too in the first exhibition that Cincinnati had this year, it kind of made me wonder here, like, have the Bearcats fallen upon hard times? Obviously, yes. But in case the early season, there are so many things that you're seeing develop, you're hoping will develop, but there's also things to work on. When you looked at this thing last night, what are some of the things, if you were in Karen Ferguson Day's shoes, would you be working on to get ready for Illinois, Chicago coming up next week?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I noticed, Jared and Daryl were talking about communication on the field. There was a little less of it than I would have liked. Um, yeah, usually, soccer, especially collegiate soccer, can be quiet enough in the crowd, even when the crowd is excited and chanting and cheering. You should be able to hear communication from players on the field, not just goalkeepers or center defenders lining up players in position, but um, more than a handful of times I noticed, passing a player into contact and not letting them know that someone's there can result in an easy turnover when could at least potentially be avoided by helping each other out. Um, so that was a small thing that I had, but that's another thing with potentially not being as comfortable with each other, not knowing where someone's comfort level with a mark on their back is when you're passing to them, things like that. So that was something I noticed, but it was minor. Like I said, Louisville still dominated the possession, so that they worked around it. Something else I noticed, like Jared said, they did work a lot down the wings, which can be effective when you play it correctly. I'd like to see them play a little more successfully out of the middle. Um, Zamperini and Sexton could have been a little more involved, I thought, but that will come. Something I was interested in was Louisville didn't play a lot of deep balls into the corner. They had a ton of speed on the outside with Patricia Ward and Morgan Bentley getting the start, and then Emerson Jennings coming in. She was really fast as well. Uh, could have really seen some balls from Denton and Alexander played into the corners and let that speed take you into an advantageous position. They played a lot of short stuff up the sides, which can work um, if you've got a good touch, or you can sneak around a defender. But it resulted in a lot of jousts and the ball going out of bounds and trading throw-ins, things like that. So we'll see if they change up the way that offense is working a little bit. Um, and as for the goalkeepers, I was glad to hear um, Karen Ferguson Day say that she didn't want to play a platoon goalkeeper. I don't think that it's effective for the team or for either player. Um, to be playing half and half. I would be surprised if we make it to the Xavier game with them still doing that. They may trade starts until they sort out who's going to be the real starter, but splitting half and half can really throw off um, the flow of the game, especially with last night we saw uh, Zalek and um, Floyd play pretty different styles in the limited amount that we saw them. Zalek got put under pressure a little bit more with some of her back passes, whether that was a communication error or just some timing, and then the weird set piece situation that was happening on Floyd's goal kicks. So if you're gonna have a change that kind of drastic, um, half to half, it could be a little disjointed for a team if you're playing in a closer game with more offensive pressure from the opponent. So those are just some of the things that I noticed. Like I said, Louisville played pretty well in the midfield, and they were able to keep the ball in the offensive third. Um, the inability to score a couple of more was unfortunate, but like I said, a really great effort from Rexford for Cincinnati. So I liked what I saw on the whole. There was some sloppiness here and there, but it was an exhibition. And so starting four freshmen and a couple of other newcomers to the team and trying to work all that out, I think that it was overall really encouraging.
Cards move on to face UIC next week in the actual first regular season game of the 22 campaign. UIC, and it was asked in the press box last night, what is UIC? It is, of course, the University of Illinois at Chicago. A fairly good school. Unfortunately, Jeff, it was a team that went 2-13 last year. They've got a brand new head coach. I know that really doesn't mean a whole lot in the scheme of things, but still, you got to feel kind of confident about the Cards going into this one against them.
Yeah, I mean, UIC is not a powerhouse in many sports, to be fair. But it's a good warm up game. It's a good intro game. Get some of the first game jitters out. It's we're looking to see it. Maybe it'll be our first taste of what our goalkeepers are really capable of, depending upon who that is. Obviously, given the previous position battle discussion. But maybe not. Maybe our experienced backline defense is going to keep our goalkeepers a less relevant aspect of the game this year. So, it'd be interesting to be able to start seeing some answers to those questions. So that's what I'll be looking for. Insofar as I'm definitely, despite Daryl's claim, definitely not an expert in soccer. Definitely pale in comparison to Case and Daryl's friend that was with us last night. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's a good warm up game. Non-conference of the ACC conference slate is brutal in soccer as it is in so many field sports. So it's a good confidence building game is what I expect it to be. Hope it is.
And it is, gang. I akin it to kind of walking through a nice quiet meadow, and all of a sudden you get out of a clump of trees, everything's fine, everything, and there's this big mountain in front of you, known as the ACC schedule, and you're like, we got to walk up that. Oh my God, yeah. So best of luck as they go through the early stuff here and do some good things. But hey, guess what? There's other sports getting ready to start here pretty soon, and
Hey,
we're
Paul.
very yeah.
Well, one thing on UIC, I was looking at their schedule. They've already had 3 exhibition games this week.
I did not realize that. They
They played Monday, Toledo, Wednesday, Southern Indiana, and then they also played last night, Central Michigan. So that's kind of a crazy exhibition schedule, in my opinion. So maybe they are trying to. They probably look at Louisville as a huge task for them, and getting that win under their belt would be a huge start to their season. They went 1-2, just winning the one last night against Central Michigan 4-1, and losing the other two 0-1. So, just quite an interesting little exhibition schedule there.
It definitely adds a new dimension to the game, then for sure. Because when you've had 3 different opportunities And
Hmm.
I'm assuming one of these, one or two were on the road probably, and then a couple were at home for them. Maybe
Hmm.
three chances though to work with your team and get them
Yeah.
in a game like situation, even though it'd be an exhibition or whatever. Still, that's I'd say that puts them a little ahead of the curve as far as preparation goes for us, right?
A little
Well,
bit.
Louisville's had two exhibitions. The one was a closed door exhibition, so we don't really know the results or what happened there. So USC's only had the one extra exhibition, and I'm not really sure I'm a fan of playing three matches in 5 days. One of the reasons that NCAA soccer got rid of regular season overtime is because you'll see 2-3 matches a lot during the regular season in a week, and it was to help to kind of prevent injuries and overexhaustion with players. I
Hmm.
mean, I get you're trying to get your team prepared for this season, and they've got pretty much a 6 day break until they're here in town. But I think you're almost asking a little too much of your players to play 3 matches in a 5 day stretch.
Just a couple observations on that. With perhaps UIC will come down here with the numbers on the back of their jerseys. That would be nice. Uh, Cincinnati decided to go without that option last night. I don't know what it was. It's like, a lot of times you'll hear a coach yell out, "Watch 17, she's cutting," or "Watch 22 in the corner." So what was Karen Ferguson Days yelling last night? Watch the girl with her hair in a knot and the pink shoes.
Watch out for the girl in the black T-shirt. No,
Yeah,
not the 5 injured players on our bench. Not those black T-shirts. The black T-shirts on the field.
Hey,
that tall girl, watch her.
it used to be worse when Cincinnati was an Adidas school, and you watch like in volleyball, and the warm ups would look
Look just like our jerseys.
identical because it's the same colors, same patterns. It was, at least they switched.
They copy us in so many ways. Those
Oh yeah,
my gracious.
I am glad that we still play Cincinnati in some realms, though.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
it is. It's been a great rivalry over the years.
I'd like to see it more in volleyball too.
Somebody
Yeah.
should have told
I'd
them a
like
keg
to
of
see it
nails
in
was
all
on
more
offer. They might have
sports.
had more effort.
Yeah,
Even putting it to women's basketball, where Michelle Clark Heard was up there for, you got,
It just makes sense.
yeah, it does. But then and also the other one that got me a little bit is when they say it's a closed door scrimmage, it had to be outdoors. So which door did they close, Jared?
not necessarily. They may have played in the Trigger Center.
I
They were playing
don't
in the
believe they
practice
were at
facility
home.
at UofL's
Yeah.
gym.
Yeah, it could have been away. Yeah.
Maybe it was in the humanities building too. They just decided to close the door. Say, well, if the ball rolls outside, it's going to go down those steps in a long way. So close the door.
This is JB Speed building with that
Yeah.
really long but very narrow hallway.
It was in the Crawford gym. That's why it was
Yeah.
so clandestine.
Yeah.
They don't know where they took the building, so they don't know where the game was.
I think it was in Broadbent, and it's the first of many moves that no, I'm not going to go there. But so absolutely a good start for women's soccer, and hopefully this can continue against UIC or I don't see. I don't know.
Paul, your jokes this morning are killing me. Maybe it's just the coffee.
It was the alcohol. No. But the field hockey squad will actually start their action on the 19th of August, and they will be going on the road to Miami. No, not the palm trees and the fun and the sun of South Florida. They're going up to Miami of Ohio for a little exhibition up there. I haven't been following field hockey very closely in the preseason here, but this was a team that went pretty far in the NCAA tournament last year and wrote a Final Four team. And Jeff, you got to feel good about what Justine Sauer has coming back here.
Again, not my most knowledgeable sport here, obviously, but there's a lot of great talent coming back. You look for a good core. There's some questions in goal about what's going to happen there, similar to soccer that were a little unanswered before the season started getting the swing of things. We'll see as this gets started and see who gets the starts there and how much time they play. Obviously. And even obviously the first games, that's not going to be fully answered. So that's going to be, I think, the big question there for field hockey is who's in goal. But bringing on coaching, minor coaching change with the assistants, but got a great core coming back. That's gonna, I think, could be a really, good squad. Um, let's hope we can be better at corners.
It was
Just
interesting that Milo, who
Mhm,
was our goalkeeper all of last year,
mhm.
decided not to come back. Obviously from Europe, she, from what I understand, just got homesick and decided that she didn't want to attend a college in America anymore. So
Hmm.
that's why she did not return. So for a long time, we saw no evidence of a goalkeeper on the field hockey roster, which led me to believe one of two things: either Justin Sauer was going to try something totally different in the world of field hockey and play with that one, or that they had not brought any onto campus yet. But in the latest U of L field hockey roster, we do have two listed. We have a graduate student, a girl by the name of Sasha Elliott, who is from Amsterdam in the Netherlands and played at VCU and will spend her graduate year at goalkeeper for us. And then also a true freshman coming in, a goalkeeper from Danville, New Jersey. And I know I'm going to botch this name, but I'm going to try it anyway. Logan Janarak. Let's see how close I
Sounds
got
good
with
to
that.
me, Paul.
I like it. Yeah, we're going to go with it. So, okay, interesting, Jared, that there's such an extreme in class decisions on here. You got a graduate student, and you got a freshman here at goalkeeper.
Yeah, for some reason, I feel like I may have kind of hinted at it last week. Maybe not, but I think what we're going to see a lot more to at least start the year is our graduate students going to be in goal a lot more, just due to the fact she has a lot more collegiate level experience. She's seen Division 1 teams in action firsthand, while we're going to spend a lot of the season developing and working on our freshman keeper, so she can be what we'll say is like the keeper of the future going forward. Uh, I could be totally wrong on that. Who knows? But that's kind of what I feel like is Justine Sari's mindset on this one. She's got some solid defenders still back there. I mean, Julie Cowhauser is going to play a strong role back there. India Reed should still be back in one of our defender positions. So you've got some veteran players you can rely on back there. I know she's lost quite a few to graduation and some transfers, as you mentioned. Mia DeKaier went back home due to some homesickness. Charlie Van Oorschot transferred down to Duke, so that's a big loss on offense. But still plenty of players to come through, and I think goalkeeper. Now that we've got a couple on the roster, I'm not too concerned about the keeper position now.
That Charlie move did kind of surprise me as well, going to Duke. But yeah, I can't fault Pam Buston. She was the coach here before Justin Sari, and I love her to death. But there are names on this roster though that we've come to know over the years. Maddie Tabor's back again, very very fine player. Jared had mentioned Cal Weiser, she's back again. Bennett Romani, certainly one that was very valuable to the team last year. We keep going down the list. Amelia Kazmarsik is back again. She was fantastic last year. Amy Plum. There are weapons on this team that are returning.
Yeah, and we mentioned it a little bit with the addition of um, the new coach, who I need to find that again. Holt. Um, First name Will. Right, Will Holt. His offensive mind, losing Charlie Van Oorschot, like we mentioned, is going to hurt. She was one of those players that you could depend on to be a front runner, but um, I talked a little bit last week about Will Holt wanting to probably diversify the offense a little bit more. So, what better way than being forced to do that by losing one of those star players on the offensive end? So, there are, like you mentioned, a lot of weapons returning. I was wondering while you were going through the roster if you were going to mention Amy Plum, a very, uh, very proficient scorer, I think is the right word. She got into a lot of that. As for goalkeeper, I would probably, if I was one of the two coaches, prefer to be in Justine Sowery's shoes with a freshman and a grad transfer, uh, giving you that opportunity where if the freshman wins out, you've got uh, experience to help in training and support there. And if the grad transfer wins out, then you've got the freshman there to learn as they go through the season. Kind of good for you either way. Whereas on the women's soccer side, with two freshmen. Whichever one wins, you're dealing with um, playing time and ego a little bit as it goes along. Having players of the same class in a single position battle there. So this field hockey team, which I apologize to, I didn't mention their games for scheduled for next week because they're still not on the composite schedule. So it goes. But it could be an exciting season. Excited to see what is going to come from some of the offensive differences that Holt is going to bring, and then how the defense will shape up in front of a new goalkeeper. Um, the way that a goalie wants to play is always part of how your defensive structure lines up, as we saw last night.
It is indeed, and certainly we'll look forward to see what can happen down there at Traeger. This one takes place, of course. And one more that we have coming up this week, a week from today, in fact, where Jeff will be scurrying like a madman after the broadcast next week to get down to beautiful SAC Center or the L&N Federal Credit Union, whatever you want to call it down there. It's that big building right across from Ulmer where they play volleyball on the 20th. So we'll get the red and black exhibition scrimmage, Jeff. Always a fun event to attend from what you've told me over the years. What say you about this volleyball schedule?
Yeah, obviously, it is a lot of fun. It's a little more laid back than a typical match. You'll see players playing on both sides of the net on the different teams sometimes, but it's always also a lot of fun seeing Dan Meskey as the associate head coach taking kind of a head coaching role on the opposite team usually. So depending on how they divide that up. The two big questions on this team are who's going to replace Anna Stevenson and Tori Delfer at setter and at middle blocker. The rest of the team is basically the rest of the starting lineup is assumed to be basically the returners from last year. So good core there. I'm looking probably Pegram Kong in middle, but there could be a position battle there with Kara Cressy. But that's a lot of that's going to depend on how the preseason goes for them. And then the other one in setter, we've got 3 setters on the roster, and again was chatting with Aika last night. She was really impressed with all 3 of them. The highest seniority on the team would be Paige Morningstar, who redshirted last year, her freshman year. She's apparently doing great things. And then Ellie Glock came in January as a transfer from USC. Kind of covered some of this in the past, but and then Raquel Lazaro also transferred in from USC, got here, I want to say late June, I think is when she arrived. So the least amount of time with the team, but playing well. Again, a pretty tough conference schedule. The ACC, if things continue from last year, took a huge step forward last year in being a power conference in volleyball. It hasn't traditionally been the case. So some big teams, Pitt and Louisville are the 2 that are pretty much topping everybody's lists in ACC preseason. Nothing official of a coach's poll from the ACC yet for preseason. I think that'll probably come out sometime this week. And then a bunch of kind of I say Louisville and Pitt, but you also need to add in Georgia Tech there. Again, lost a couple of key players, but a lot of great players coming back. Julie Bergman's back down there, so they could have a good season as well. A team that has been improving year after year. Behind those top 3, you're looking at Miami, Florida State, Duke's looks pretty good from what I'm hearing, so they could be a contender as well. Question marks at Notre Dame, Syracuse, and some other schools. So, it's going to be an interesting year. I think we have a good sense how a lot of it goes, but a few question marks in the schedule there. And then, of course, the non-conference schedule. Kentucky has been a really good team in recent years. Obviously, winning the national championship a couple of years ago. That qualifies. Stanford is always a good team in volleyball. We play them in California, so that'll be an interesting one. Purdue is always a good opponent. We've got the Xavier Lipscomb matchup. Some good stuff. A couple of easier early season tournaments start out up in South Dakota with who all is up there? South Dakota, Missouri, and Northern Kentucky. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting schedule. It's going to be a lot of fun. Saturday should be a lot of fun with next week with the red and black. Like I said, always fun. Concessions usually are open for it in recent years, so come check it out. A lot of fun. It's maybe your only chance to get in to see a game, actually, based on what we were saying earlier. Contention for tickets will be tough from the sounds of it. So,
And Daryl, guess what?
What?
Sydney Shetland's on the volleyball team now. She was a basketball player last year. What about this move as she comes in as a middle blocker for volleyball?
Yeah, it was pretty exciting when we heard that she was going to be on campus, and I kind of got the feeling that she would have to pick one of the sports to focus on. It just seems like a lot to balance school plus two very high prominent programs with the practice schedules, and the just seems like a lot of demand from one person. So I guess she went with the volleyball route, and I'm sure Coach Busboom Kelly is going to utilize her, and hopefully she gets out of it what she wanted to. So looking forward to that. And with Jeff going out there to the red and black scrimmage, another thing I was thinking that would be good would come away from that is just fans and their experience and getting everybody on the same page as far as chants. Just a small thing, but my pep rally mind goes to that for this kind of like a big pep rally.
You could always join Jeff in running down the steps, Daryl.
He'll take one side, I'll take the other. We'll meet in the middle and high five.
Just don't trip over each other.
I traditionally have not done that for the red and black scrimmage because which side do you do it for?
I see
It's double
Jeff's
duty.
leading some soccer cheers now too for volleyball, right? Going to incorporate those in there.
Yeah.
Please
Probably
do.
not.
Is cowbell allowed inside?
I want to see
Probably
him
not.
run from his women's basketball seats down to right behind
Yeah.
the bench and lead chairs.
Yeah.
That's going to be like twice.
Yeah, because it got to dodge the opening to the bar below too, so that's an added challenge.
I'd be making a detour. No.
All right, you're going into the logistics. So that's too much.
That's right. But all right, so good things coming up here. My gosh, we've already rolled past the noon hour here, so we're having a lot of fun on today's broadcast. So let's go ahead and then segue on into our final thoughts. Let's go ahead and start with you, Case. Final thoughts.
Yeah, this kind of spills outside of U of L and a little bit outside of women's sports, but noticed on Twitter earlier that Louisville City announced their first ever sellout of Lynn Family Stadium. So
13,000 plus.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's just a huge event, I guess, in the soccer scene in Louisville. We've talked about at length the addition of Louisville City and Racing Louisville and the impact that they have on the soccer scene in the city and at the University of Louisville. So as attendance grows there for what is not technically a top tier pro team, to be able to do that and the showing we saw for last night's exhibition game, it's just exciting to see the soccer community grow and hopefully bring out more and more attendance, especially with the free games this season for U of L women's soccer. So would love to see even more people out, and I think that sellout crowds at a big pro stadium like that is part of the path forward.
Certainly a great path indeed to walk down. Let's hope that it continues. Daryl, final thoughts.
So I was just scrolling through Twitter and looking for some headlines, and the first thing that pops up is Emily Angsler. So she was a stat leader for the Fever last night. It was a loss for them against the Mystics, but seems to me like and I haven't watched all of the WNBA, but she's got quite the campaign for Rookie of the Year. Just last night, she had 18 points, 5 rebounds, and 3 blocks. I mean, to me, she's just a huge part of that team. And I know the team isn't doing really well. I think that they're already eliminated for the last few weeks from postseason, and they've got their last game tomorrow against the Mystics again. But she still has made her name known in the league, and she's establishing her role with the Fever, and I'm excited for her, and hope that they can build around her. So really excited for Emily Ingsler's um, professional career.
Let's hope that M can keep it going, and hopefully they can turn it around up there. Or you never know.
They
We
got a whole lot of L's on this schedule, Paul.
yeah, you hope that they can turn it around next year. But yeah, there's a ton of L's there, and then once again, like we've seen with some of our other players that have gone to the WNBA, you can get traded in a heartbeat. One day you can be in the cellar, the next day you could be going to the playoffs. So
True.
I think everybody knows the skill of Emily Ingsler. It is not to be reproached as a freshman or a rookie in the league, and she's only going to get better, kids. She's only
Yep.
going to get better.
She's got that drive. And I just look at the last time the Fever won was on June 19th, and it was a down to the wire win against Chicago, 89-87.
Yeah, certainly things not all that great up for the Fever this year, but Emily's been a bright spot.
Beating Chicago is pretty good, though. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
absolutely. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
with the Van Sloot and of course our own Dana Evans up there,
Yeah.
and that roster, Candace
they're at the
Parker,
top of the league, too.
Yeah, I
That's
remember that win.
that was a big win for them, and so they hope that they can do it. All right, Jared, what you got for me? Final thoughts?
Yeah, just gonna reiterate kind of what we talked about at the beginning of the show. It's excuse me, it's so nice to have sports back. It's been a long summer. It felt like it's been a long summer. So glad to be back to what feels like the normal once you get the semester started up, and it's just good to be able to see everybody and get the whole crew together. And hopefully we really do find some more games throughout the season for all the different sports where we can get everyone together.
I do hope that as well. I really do. I think it's something that we need to do, and we'll make it happen somehow. They may have to drag me kicking and screaming from my lazy chair, but they'll get me out there to something. I know. Jeff, final thoughts, sir.
Yeah, so I mean, we got to talk about I got to talk about volleyball a little bit. Yeah, I'll get my tongue working here a little bit a minute ago, so that's good. I did on the way to soccer last night. I did drive by the field hockey stadium and saw that new turf. Man, that looks sharp.
It is.
Yeah, I don't know who's doing design work at UofL, but they're really killing it. The new volleyball jerseys look great. The turf looks great. Some great stuff going on from a design and visual sort of marketing sort of appeal sort of thing. So it's good to see some great things going on there. I'm looking forward to seeing that in use more. And of course, volleyball, because I'm me and that's what gets me going. So
Certainly, indeed, some fun headed up for Jeff down the road, and certainly I'm looking forward to field hockey too. And just as far as my final thoughts go, just we had talked about the plethora of new faces on the women's soccer team. Uh, field hockey has 10 new faces on their roster, gang. 10 new players that were not there last year. This was a Final Four team. So certainly we'll try to get to know them down the road. Karen, Justine Sowry has a very, very strong penchant for bringing in players that we may not have heard of, but turned out to be pretty special. Of course, I remember this goalkeeper we had a couple of years ago. I don't know, McBaron or McFerrin or something. She turned out pretty well. We'll always love Alicia. Let's hope there's a couple of Alicias in that bunch that she's brought in this year as well. That will do it for another episode of the Cardinal Couple Radio Hour podcast. We certainly appreciate you listening. Tell your friends, bring a neighbor next time around. And unless you know something I don't, we'll see you next week at 11 a.m.